Good morning everyone to this frosty, snowy and very early morning session. Good morning also to our online audience, and I understand that our online audience is bigger than our live one, so we're talking directly to you. Uh, so our first session today is called Global Business Leadership: Driving Trust and Sustainable Value Creation in a Fragmented World. We have four amazing speakers with us today from four different backgrounds that will elaborate later on these issues. Gregory Dimitriadis, who is the CEO and Executive Board Member of Growthfund, the National Fund of Greece. Anthony Hemsley, Global External Engagement Lead Director of JTI, the Japan Tobacco Industry. Ilkay Demirdag, Strategic Advisory Board Member of Avanea and Istanbul Ambassador of Top Tier Impact. And last but not least, Cyntia Ortiz Toledo, Group Head Public and Regulatory Affairs of Coca-Cola Hellenic. Well, I was reading an article this morning in the Arab News under the title "Trust is the Key to Heal a Fragmented World." And indeed, we have seen recently, in many cases, especially in the post-pandemic era, that trust in public institutions, trust in government is in a decline. At the same time, there is a lot of expectations from the global community that leadership coming from the business world can take a more proactive role, can take a role that can contribute constructively to heal all these issues. And as the article says, trust is the key. Is it actually the key? I will start with Gregory, continue with Anthony, Ilkay, and Cynthia for the first round of introductory remarks, and then we can open up the discussion. Gregory, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. The Growth Fund is the Greek Sovereign Wealth Fund. And we are 6 years old, but we are now trying to become to make our investment pillar, and that's why we also have partners also from Switzerland, Berg Capital, to help us move towards this direction. And the key characteristic is that we have a number of state-owned enterprises. So we are the biggest shareholders of the power company, which is also doing a lot of renewables. It's also part of your supporters. We have the water and sewage companies. We have the postal services. We have a fund under us, which is the privatization fund. And effectively, it is the one that makes long concessions for big toll roads or ports. And a real estate company and so on. And what Constantino said, I think it's very key because trust does mean a lot, and it depends on its government and on its agency how they perform in order to build the trust with the citizens. And in our case, this is one of the challenges. So we have a 3-year plan, and we have 3 major pillars of targets. And the first one is the business, the economic side that we have to do. The second is exactly this, is the more social and connection that we have with the public. So one of the KPIs we measure is the trust that the people have in our companies and our entity. And the third is the environment, which is also key, since we are not, as a wealth fund, as rich as other sovereign wealth funds, but we are much more flexible to do things, and we have a big priority for energy transition, and that's something that we focus on, since we can actually deliver, and we're on the same page in this with all the other big players in the market. So that's what our aim is, to help the Greek economy get strengthened through all the investment side on one part and the services through our subsidiaries. And only last thing to say is that because the political, and we were discussing earlier, because we also have elections in Greece this year, there is also in Turkey. The good thing is that despite these elections that sometimes think there is going to be volatility in the business side, it is much better in the sense that we're independent from the government, so there is a separation between policy making, which is with the politicians and the government, and the operational management of these companies. And I think overall there is a consensus in Greece now on where to move forward, and investments and growth is the priority that everybody believes that we should focus on. And that's what also in the polls that we have done, we see. That's what even the young generation wants, more investments. They don't want, obviously, because it's connected to more jobs. So that's from an introduction to see what is Growthfund. And yeah.
Okay, shall I carry on? Good morning. My name is Ilkay Demirdag. I'm from Turkey. I'll just give a bit of background to give my perspective and how I approach actually the trust issue. I have 25 years of experience, and my background is in corporate finance and private equity. I was involved in the establishment of the first renewable energy fund in Turkey. And after 25 years of corporate life, I actually quit last year. And I set up my own company because I really wanted to act in line with my purpose in life and values, which is really to care about people and environments. And I'm working with different impact funds globally. I'm on the strategic board member of one of the impact funds based in Brussels. How I actually see trust. Actually, we're in a very fragmented world at the moment, and the issues are so complex, and solving them with one solution is not really possible. We really need strong partnerships between governments, corporations, NGOs, and to align them all. Trust is at the core, if you ask me. I mean, if you trust the system, if you trust the people, you can create good partnerships, which could be the solution of this world's, emerging and very urgent problems. And I see that, I work with a lot of startups. I work with funds. I see, successful and unsuccessful investments. And at the core of it, it's all about people. And if people work in alliance, if there's a trust in the system, there's transparency, those things, work well. But when you are in a corrupted environments with corrupted mindsets, you cannot really create something good out of that. So that's how I really approach trust.
Thank you. Good morning. The question from Konstantinos, the answer is categorically yes. All through this week at the World Economic Forum and at other occasions, we hear a lot of dialogue about trust. It's a fantastic topic. It's intrinsically important, and one we could probably talk about for 3 weeks. Trust is being mentioned over and over again. The UN Secretary General this week talked about trust and the need for cooperation, greater trust. We've heard many important speakers and world leaders talking about the need for open and inclusive dialogue. The fact that they're talking about this and mentioning it suggests that there is a lack of trust and open and inclusive dialogue. So I'm going to work on that belief that there is that lack and that we need to do something about it. In society, there is a general lack of tolerance. It is no longer accepted to have different opinions. It's either what I think or you're wrong. And we need in society to build back tolerance, to build back an acceptance of different points of view. And from the world of regulation and policy making, I believe that business is an absolute catalyst for positive change. This week, Edelman published its trust barometer. It shows yet again that trust in government is in decline, 3 years in a row. It shows that trust in the media and in NGOs is in decline. It also shows that trust in business is remaining high and stable, and that business is now seen as the only reliable source of trusted information and outscores governments in terms of competency and ethics. So why is that? What is there that business is doing that others are not doing? Well, business is accountable. It's accountable to its employees, it's accountable to its shareholders, it's accountable to the communities and societies in which it operates. And there's a lot there that government and others can learn from business. These are not manifesto pledges that businesses make that we don't meet, but we hope everybody has forgotten about in 2 to 3 years' time. CEOs have to stand in front of shareholders and they make commitments and they're required to keep to those commitments. And these are about commitments that are achievable, they're ambitious, but they are achievable and realistic, about delivering growth, increasing employment, and really uplifting our societies and our communities where we all share and benefit from that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cyntia Ortiz. I head Public and Regulatory Affairs in Coca-Cola Hellenic. It's a strategic bottling partner from Coca-Cola Company. We have presence in 29 countries, one of them being Greece, where we are the largest beverage company. And of course, as you can hear from Hellenic, Greece is very, very close to our heart and to our identity. We have been acknowledged several times as one of the most sustainable beverage companies and #1 GSI this year. But beyond talking about some achievements in terms of sustainability, which is key to our business, I want to go back to the point of the panel and the selection of these two words, trust and value creation, which is extremely interesting. I'm following up to what Anthony was saying about all these conversations of trust. I think we have to be very open and share, well, after what happened with the pandemic and all these sweeping regulatory decisions that had to be made, most of them in isolation, there was not a time to respond and to react to the situation that we were facing. So that led to erosion of trust. And that's what we're facing. How we rebuild this? And then we talk about value creation as well. But before we go into that, we need to see how we rebuild trust. Yes, I absolutely agree there is a good trust in the public sector, in the private sector, but from whom? And when we talk about, achieving goals of trust, partnerships, we have all these great commitments, as you know, the SDG commitment, number 17, let's build partnership, let's rebuild trust. Does it happen in reality? And how much does it happen? Are we all involved into the process that we should be involved? Everybody that has a voice, are they being heard? And one of the key elements about these partnerships and open collaboration is that we are all looking for the same goal, the benefits of society, the benefits of consumers, the benefits of everyone else. But how do we achieve that in terms of collaboration? If we want, in one side, regulatory policymakers thinking about the best approach that they can think of for society, but not necessarily having all the technical knowledge and the details of how this potential regulation is going to come into practice. Another thing that I think it's affecting, obviously, is this poly-crisis situation we have been facing. And it has been very challenging for everyone, the public sector, the private sector. We had COVID, then we have the conflict, then we have crisis, inflation, and we have several issues. We're not talking about crisis, it's a continuity of crisis. So now, how we're responding to that? And the only way to respond to a common threat is collaboration. And how we achieve it, I think that's the key of the debate as well. We all agree we need to build partnerships. We all agree we need to be on the same side and open discussions. The problem is, does that really happen in practice? Do we really, really get together to take every view into account? How can we streamline that in a way that actually makes everybody part of the debate and delivers the best outcome for everyone else? Thank you.
Just a second. Thank you. Wow. I think we all agree that trust is the key word in our discussion. And indeed, I'm reading now that according to the Global Risk Report for 2023 of the World Economic Forum, since we are in its annual meeting, it was published last week, one of the biggest perceived threats for the next year, well, actually for this year, is income disparity, but also at the same time the lack of trust in government and institutions. I will keep from your remarks a few things. First of all, both Gregory and Ilkay refer to the elections coming in Greece and Turkey, and it's a question that it's a question that I want to make after in our second round. How does actually the cooperation between the government, the institutions, and the business sector is perceived from the business world, and how does actually it affects also the issues of sustainability, of cooperation, and if it affects also the employees. And another thing is, Anthony said that business is accountable. That's something very interesting, and indeed it's true, it's accountable. You described it very well. Government institutions aren't accountable. And actually, why do we feel that business is performing better, especially in the post-pandemic era? And it's very interesting because Cynthia referred to the elephant in the room, which is the pandemic, that has more or less changed everything in the way we feel, in the way we react, in the way we operate in an everyday basis. And I suppose the feeling among the majority of the people is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the business world has adapted better to the needs of its employees, to the needs of the ordinary people, better than the governments and the public institutions. So I will keep all these three issues, and I will come back to you with a second round, and feel free to answer any of these questions, or all of them.
Great. So, no, you did a very good summary of everybody, I have to say. Now, the thing is that, because we mentioned the pandemic, okay, we say it was, and we all experienced it as an extremely difficult period for about 2 years. But on the other hand, we also have to acknowledge and appreciate the fact that even as a human race, we managed all together to go over it, despite this unprecedented at global stage situation, to react much faster than in any previous time in human history, and find solutions and address it. And now, even after this disruption, to be able to live again a more normal life. And we're here together, not just everybody virtual. We don't even wear masks. So this shows that when everybody sees that there is a big threat, and they can work together, and they can collaborate, and they can succeed. And that's, we did it with the pandemic. We can also do it with the climate change, when we all realize that this is the problem. A serious problem that we have to immediately act. And in this respect, I think that we have to be also a little bit optimistic, in the sense that since there is this realization, we will be able to make some collaborations and efforts. During the pandemic, even if it was private companies or governments, they all worked towards trying their best and out-of-the-box ways to solve things, because the businesses had to do logistics of masks and medicine. The government had to address the challenges of the public health care. And I think out of this, we can also see that the countries that did a little bit, or perceived to do a little bit better, they also got more trust from their citizens. So in the case of Greece, this was true. Greece being a country that it was very infamous over the previous decade, with the crisis and the economic problems we were facing, we became famous for a very good reason, because we managed this. And this helped a lot the public to gain trust in the state functions, because it protected them. It delivered something that it was at a critical moment. Now it is our responsibility to make sure that this progresses. I very much agree that we have to, and this goes across everything, is to have tolerance. And this is something that we also try to do, because we have about 6 billion under assets under our management, but we also have a little bit more than 30,000 employees in our subsidiaries. So this is something sizable, and we want everybody to understand that they also have to cooperate and have synergies together, and this only goes through tolerance. And this is what we have to do with engaging our people, because they will also then offer better services and to the wider public. And but on the other hand, at the collaboration level, what we try to do is, as I said, we were a 6-year-old, relatively new fund. But we are doing a lot of outreach to speak to other sovereign wealth funds to see what they do and to collaborate. So there are even networks, like for the Mediterranean, that we connect with other funds in order to see how we can do and invest in common projects. Or the One Planet initiative, which is an initiative of sovereign wealth funds and private funds, the private sector and the wealth funds, that we all coordinate actions for climate change and to do and to adhere to the Paris Agreement. And this is, I think, very a good idea about the good concept behind the One Planet, which was France's idea, sponsored by Emmanuel Macron. It was that if the sovereign wealth funds, and which are state but independent in their business thinking, they move towards one direction, then the other ones, the BlackRocks and so on, they will also move towards a similar direction, and everybody will mobilize towards something that will help achieve green transition. So this is some comments from my side, and as you see, with yes. Greece and Turkey, we're very close, despite all this.
In many ways.
In many ways, and yes.
No, I mean, I'm very close to Greece, really, in every respect. All my best friends are Greek, so really, I adore the country and the people. So,
Yes.
and I think at the people level, that's really general perception. Politics is a different story.
But also then the business side, we have a good commerce
Yeah.
and interaction. So
For sure.
Side,
So my heart is with Greece. So I'll start with the pandemic and then, take it towards all the issues that you raised in the 3 questions. I'll try to summarize. Well, with the start of the pandemic, actually everything changed in our mindsets, in how we do business, how we act, how we perceive, social and work-life balance, how we actually be present in our values and stuff like that. But that was just the start, because with the war ongoing between Ukraine and Russia, and the Cold War between USA and China, there's so much conflict in the world. And of course, for the first time, we're seeing energy and food being used almost as a weapon, because actually countries started going towards inside, and they are trying to be, standing with their own power. They realize, you need to really survive with your own resources. And also with the increasing energy and food prices, inflation is a big problem globally. That actually triggered many other things, and the policies to combat that actually slowed down economies globally, and purchasing power reduced, and social inequalities and social inequalities increased. So overall, we have so many problems to tackle. And I see, three subjects to focus on: agility, adaptability, and actually priority. So what do you prioritize? I mean, in terms of all these, complex timeline that we had since the start of the pandemic, the successful companies who actually had more trust from their stakeholders were the ones who prioritize people first. So if you could really, really focus on the people and then, align yourself, that was a starting point, how I read it. And the second part is how agile you are, because things are changing very fast, and your agility to adapt in terms of your business models is very critical. And third one is adaptability. While doing all that, can you really take care of all of your stakeholders? Because we need to really shift from this shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, and really think about all of our stakeholders' value increase, not just shareholders. We need to really care about the whole society, the whole value chain. I see those three topics as very critical in terms of creating the trust related to the first question, and creating more successful corporations.
Thank you. You've summed up what I'm about to say very nicely. Why is business leading the way? I honestly believe that the solutions come from business. We don't have time to sit and wait for government to develop the solutions. And it's actually the right thing that those solutions come from business. They're operating on the ground. They're responsible for many employees and communities. At JTI, one of the most regulated companies in the world, working in a highly regulated industry, investing in Greece, in many countries, in over 130 countries in the world, with nearly 50,000 employees, an enormous value chain supporting the lives of 40 million farmers and many other jobs indirectly associated with our operations. During the pandemic, we absolutely prioritized the well-being and safety of those people. That was our number one priority. Following the pandemic, we developed flexible working arrangements, the fact that our employees can work from home, that can actually spend time working in different locations. This all came from the business sector. It didn't come from government. This week, actually, we've just received, for the 9th year in a row, been certified as a global top employer. And it shows that we take these matters very seriously, the welfare and safety and health of our people. We take diversity and inclusion extremely seriously. We take the impact that we have on the environment and our efforts towards sustainability very seriously. Why? Because we believe that accelerates our growth. It makes us an organization where employees want to come to. It attracts talent. It makes our future success more likely and sustainable. And we can help share in that success where we operate. The idea of open and inclusive dialogue, I want to go back to that for a second, because there is a gap here. Business is trusted because, in the main, business makes and takes decisions based on the facts and evidence that are available, and looks at all of those to create workable and balanced solutions. That's not always the case with policymakers. They don't always listen to all points of view. And in the case of the tobacco industry, it's often that they don't listen to the tobacco industry at all, that they exclude those viewpoints and create regulation on that industry without listening to what the potential impacts or consequences of that regulation could be. And there are many other examples whereby not having all stakeholders present and allowing all views to be heard, that we end up with the right decisions. Can we trust governments who are put in place to make informed decisions if they're not actually making informed decisions, and that they're offering a monopoly of voice to others, and sometimes those that are least affected by those decisions? The last few days here and listening to the ministers from the Greek government with a desire to be the most business-friendly country in the EU, I think is absolutely music to businesses' ears. So commendation for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I fully agree with many of the points that have been raised. I want to pick up on in a couple of them. I absolutely agree that we need to build about these partnerships in pragmatic ways. So of course we understand regulator makers, they have the best intentions to do something. But this is exactly the point of why do we need to have a voice as a business sector? Not only because we walk the talk, we do deliver what we say we will, because we have to, we have commitments and we have this commitment to our consumers, we do it. But what is the relevance, disrespectful of the sector? The key thing is that we are on the ground, as you were saying. We know the technical details. We know exactly how this idea could be good, but in practice it might not deliver what you're aiming to do. So maybe there needs to be some adjustments, some considerations that had to be taking place as well. So creating this good space where every voice that has to be heard is actually going to be very beneficial. But one other thing that I listened as well about priorities, and I'll come back to that point, relates a lot to the other point about sustainable value creation. How do we create value, especially a sustainable value? And it links a little bit to the priorities. So we know, and obviously pre-pandemic and previous to this poly-crisis, we're facing inflationary pressures, geopolitical tensions, and we can go with the continuity of this. We have to expect now that this is not the exception. Now this is the continuity. We will have tensions and crises along the way. What happens in terms of sustainability and priorities? I think obviously when we were facing all these initial crises, we had to react, and governments had to react quickly to address these points. People obviously were taken into the first line. But then it comes to, do we still have the luxury of time to also address other threatening challenges we have that we unfortunately cannot wait anymore, and we need to take action? And that's actually sustainability and climate change, for example, pollution. So there are a lot of discussions, and in the program in Davos this year as well, there's a lot of intentions also to keep progressing in terms of our ambitions towards net zero, for example. Many companies are committing to do this, to really raise up net zero. In Hellenic, we have committed to have net zero by 2040 in scope 3. So we have a lot of good intentions, but this is the part when we're all interconnected. One industry or all the industries, they cannot deliver on something unless we have a very good partnership with the governments. And not only the governments in isolation as well. So we're not only talking that this has to be high in the national agenda as well. It has to be high in the multilateral agenda as well. And we know also, because of all the different situations that have happened, that also multilateralism is having a damage in the trust, in the toll. We know many other organizations are also not seen as they were in the past. So how do we revive this? How we are all part of these debates? And I think even at multilateral level, when countries are negotiating this, and one example is the UN Treaty on Plastic, for example, there's also an opportunity there to take into account many other views of all the people, the industries, everyone that has a voice. This is just an example of how we can start collaborating, not only at national, but at multinational level in specific aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew Hammond is a good friend. He's running the Idea Center in the London School of Economics, and I like to read his articles. A couple of days ago he wrote, when he was describing how he sees the world in 2023. The challenge and potentially the opportunity is greater now, giving rise to what is seen as a new way for firms to secure a competitive advantage by creating sustainable shared value for society as well as for their shareholders. And I would like to give emphasis to the word shared, which is I think it's a question that more or less has been answered by all our panelists, but giving emphasis to shared, how can the business world secure that the employees, that the citizens are also part of this process, and what is created, the value that is created, is also shared with them and creates and gives actually this competitive advantage to business, an advantage that may, in some cases, the governments and the public sector does not have. It's not necessarily, it does not apply to all, of course, all sectors and all challenges that we face, but yeah, what is the perception of shared value from the business world? Thank
you. Yes, the shared. First of all, we all have the same shared value as a value, which is that we want to grow and have prosperity, and this is a good base to start. Now, of course, the businesses, and this includes also the state-owned businesses as well as the private businesses. It is very important that they produce things which makes their shareholders happy, but their shareholders are not just the individual business people who have the shares, but in many cases they are shareholders. For example, for our companies, is the whole population, is all the citizens. And this is something that we have, any action that we do, it has, and it is important that it is also communicated in that way and presented in that way. So, because sometimes we do things, but we don't actually communicate them in that way, so nobody can see and understand the benefit out of this collaboration or of this partnership. It happens also within businesses. Sometimes people work a lot, but they don't see the result of their own company. They do just one part, and they don't have a big view of how their contribution gives their company the product and whatever it makes it successful. And the same thing is for us, because everybody is doing something, and then it adds up to the life that we have today and the life that we are planning to do. So I think it's key that we do this, and ESG, which is it's not just a hype. I think it's the way to do the transformation of even companies, especially state companies. It is a good reason and a way to move to do the change management towards this direction, and of course share it with the people also in terms of knowledge. And that's what we also try to do. And Anthi, who is the communications and sustainability person, is actually trying this a lot to see how we not just do some things, but also other people understand it, appreciate it, not because we want to be famous, but because this will help us to do more collaborations and build more trust.
Okay, thank you. I'll take the shared value concept to a step further. I'm more focused on impact-driven value creation because with shared values, maybe you're more focused on preventing things, but we are at a stage, as you said, it's pretty urgent and we need to act really immediately. And whilst doing that, we really need to really measure our impact as well. And for that, a couple of things are very critical, according to me. I mean, accountability is critical. You really need to be accountable for all your actions, and you need to be part of solution. So I think we need to really take all stakeholders to be part of the solution and be accountable for their acts. And the last one is measurement of impact. what you create, and we really need to start measuring the impact of our actions so that we know we're on the right track. That's from my end. Thank you.
Well, I agree in the concept of shared value creation, and I think as business becomes more successful, it has the opportunity to share more, and to for those that are part of or surround the value chain of those businesses to benefit. So from JTI's perspective, we invest millions in community investment projects around the world on an annual basis. And clearly, the more successful we are, the more we're able to contribute, the more we're able to alleviate poverty, to make sure that children are educated in the global south where we operate, to provide more support to our growers. And I think part of this and the discourse and discussion with government has to be around incentivizing business prosperity. There are obviously two approaches. One is a carrot and one is a stick. We can regulate and demand, and business will comply or do its best to comply. Or we can incentivize business. We can free business up from bureaucracy, from unnecessary regulatory hurdles, so that it has the opportunity to become prosperous and to grow and to increase employment, and so that everybody can share in those opportunities that come with it.
Thank you. Coming back to your point, I absolutely agree. I think unless we measure what we're doing and we have clear targets and scientific-based knowledge of how we're going to achieve those, we are not going to be either accountable or getting there. So I think, again, the private sector is leading on this. I know in Hellenic we're doing a lot about really measuring and having clear plans of where we're going, what we're doing. But again, it cannot be the private sector only. We need also the government to have all these clear plans and, work in parallel with us. It happens in many occasions, but we can always improve. Another thing about value creation and shared values, and I think that's maybe also the reason why the private sector is so accountable and so close, is because we have consumers at heart. It's the center and it's the basic of everything we do. Consumers are everything for us. So we do listen to what consumers want, and obviously this has a direct impact in society as well. We are very close to them, so we hear and we respond quickly to their needs. That's something that we can bring to the table as well, to say this is how the consumer is reacting, this is how society is developing. As well, we in the private sector, we really like to contribute to society and donations, investments, all that we are bringing to the countries where we participate. That's key. But how we can upscale this in another way to try to really build a true partnership with governments. We have it as well in many countries. Yes, many countries are very open to listen. This is excellent, but we can always do more and do better. We can always create these specific spaces where we can build that. So I think how we're sharing and creating this value really comes from the origin of what we're doing. And for us, and I guess it's everything in the private sector, is the consumers being the center of everything.
Thank you very much. I think it was very refreshing and very inspiring to see global business leaders paving the way, and always we have in mind that business is there to create new jobs, to contribute to the economy, but now we see that it's taking a very active role also in global challenges, and it helps to create a better world. I think the discussion we just had could be also the answer to the title of this year's WEF annual meeting, Cooperation in a Fragmented World. Thank you all very much. Thank you for watching us, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.